Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Usually Fixing and Tinkering. And this time, excuse me, if the next shot and the next clip of me is completely different to this because of some video corruption, my first 3 minutes of the video decided to disappear. So I'm going to repeat myself once again. So this episode is about European Car of the Year award. Now, recently there has been a magazine called the Car and Sports Classic magazine that has been around since decades, probably the best-selling classic car magazine ever. And recently, the editor, the management, asked their staff and journalists who have worked at that magazine for many years what is their favourite or what they consider to be the greatest of the 60 cars now, because 60 years of European Car of the Year, which started out in 1964 with a very familiar car to myself. This award has been going on that long, believe it or not, and it's very, very difficult to win this sort of award. Now, they've basically had to decide between one car of each decade, so 6 decades. So they narrowed it down to 6 cars. And then they decided that they were going to choose their favourite out of the 6. Let's say their favourite, the car that they consider the best car of the decades. And this has only just been done. A recent issue in their magazine, I think it was the February edition this month. So if you haven't bought a copy, go and get a copy of this particular magazine because it is in the shops, and namely WH Smith's and a few others, to name a few, just to drop that in there, because I find it a fascinating read. I've already read it, I've got the magazine, and I was only made aware about this about a member on a certain Focus Mark 1 group, because, well, need I say any more? But I'm going to take a look at through the years of European Car of the Year, because there are some cars that I've never even encountered before, and I didn't even know they'd won it. And I actually have found some surprising facts as I've gone and researched this to make this video in the first place. So this is certainly a learning curve for me. But some of the cars I knew about, certain British cars that have won it in the past, but there's a lot of cars that I had no idea who had won it, and it is a tough ask. I haven't really paid attention to anything beyond 2010 because they're just not interesting enough for me, despite the fact that the award still has a lot of creditation for still today, more so than it used to be. So let's see what. Well, let's go and start from the beginning. But firstly, there is something I have to say, or I think I did say. Cut to the Andrew of 3 days ago when he made this video. Just a quick note before I go to the next clip. Please like and subscribe. Please subscribe if you have not already done so, because clearly you're watching me. Clearly you must like my videos if you watch me, because my channel is a very, very niche channel. It is a very small channel, and I don't intend for it to be a big channel because I generally have much more of a niche than most YouTubers. So I just thought I'd put that there. Thank you very much. Now I'm just going to pick some cars that really stand out in my head. But the first thing I will say is that in 2015 I had both my current Focus Mark 1 and my old Rover P6, which is still kicking around somewhere, maybe down south I believe. But I had both the cars parked on the driveway, and I was just working on the P6 at the time, and somebody passed. He loved the look of the P6, got talking about it. Obviously he was into cars, and he made an interesting comment that I did not have any awareness about, and that is, do you know that you own 2 cars that have won the European Car of the Year? No, I did not. I absolutely did not. I'd never even heard of European Car of the Year before this conversation. And the fact that the first 2 cars that I have owned were European Car of the Year winners. I mean, what coincidence is that? I mean, maybe I just got lucky. Maybe out of just pure coincidence, but Nevertheless, the P6 was a design classic, exactly the same as the Mark 1 Focus. In fact, I don't think I could have picked two better cars to be a modern car and a classic car in terms of showcasing what a design classic looks like. But anyway, the winner of the 1964, the first inaugural year of the European Car of the Year. Can you guess what car that was? Oh yes, the Rover P6. Because it came out in 1963 and it was pretty different to pretty much every saloon car, British-wise and European. I mean, let's face it, there's a reason it won that award. It took the world by storm and it sold in much greater numbers than the P5 ever did and the P4. And it definitely paved the way for the Rover SD1 to carry on with that success. Not quite so much successful, I don't think, but the P6 was a proper Rover, and that's when I call a proper Rover. 1965, the year after, remarkably, the Austin 1800, which I thought was rather antiquated, but maybe for 1965 it wasn't, with some of the styling cues to go with it. Interesting. But we've got some other cars like Renault 16, Fiat 124. Wow, that is certainly an interesting car indeed. The NSU R080. Goodness me, this is an oddball of a car, isn't it? Using that first Wankel rotary engine, which found its way in later years in certain Mazdas. Not a particular success. I think it was like 20,000 miles or even less, and the rotor tips had worn out, and then you had no compression whatsoever in the engine, or what is classified as compression in that engine is very different. In fact, there was no way of actually registering what cc capacity, cubic capacity the engine was, because there was no way of measuring it. What a fascinating car, and the first German car to win European Car of the Year. It looked for 1968 to be such a modern car, and you can see all the styling cues. Absolutely amazing, utterly amazing. It was just such a modern car to look at. And the next one was the Peugeot 504, styled by Pininfarina. Very rugged, very dependable car, that. And I'm not surprised, because it was quite a well-designed car for its time. And they're very underrated, very underrated. It certainly gave Peugeot its hardcore sort of reputation going into the 1980s, which was a golden era for Peugeot, to be honest. The Fiat 128, well, yeah, absolutely. And it was the Fiat 128 was the first car to win European Car of the Year twice. It was that good, which is virtually unknown, I will put it that way. Citroen GES, the Fiat 127, which, you know, Fiat were on a high with some of their products they were making, and they were certainly ahead of the game and very understated compared to a lot of manufacturers, certainly so anyway. You got the Audi 80, the Mercedes 450 SE, which, goodness me, I'm not sure why in 1974 a 450 SE managed to win European Car of the Year, considering that would have been directly after the oil crisis, being a luxury car, and namely it was the first ever Mercedes S-Class, I will put it that way, and it was a massive victory for Mercedes, this car. And Citroen CX, the Simca, the Rover SD1, the 3500, or as known as a 2200 or 2600, amazing car, and a pure design thoroughbred from the start, and a very exciting car. It makes you want to own a Rover because it was a bit more daring, a bit more exciting, and it definitely would have taken Rover forwards if it had been built properly. Unfortunately, that wasn't, so it did win the European Car of the Year. But apart from that, it's an example that European Cars of the Year winners don't exactly translate into actually great cars, and the Rover SD1 for me is not a patch on the P6 for this reason. The Porsche 928 being the sort of cheaper brother, but nevertheless the first and only sports car to win European Car of the Year. Absolutely crazy, and it is a modern car. I mean, look at that. I mean, for 1978, that is absurd. There's no lines to it, and people love them, absolutely love them. The Simca Horizon, oof, goodness me. The Lancia Delta, goodness me. That is an impressive win for the Lancia Delta. In fact, I didn't actually know that, but I'm presuming that it would have beaten quite a serious amount of competitors in 1980. I mean, I know the Vauxhall Astra Mark II would have been very fairly new at the time. I'm assuming, or it would have been the Mark 1. Can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been the Mark II. And obviously in 1981, what came out? Ford Escort. Yep, absolutely. Project Eureka, absolutely. A German car for Europe, and I would definitely say so. But co-developed with the UK, but not that far ahead over a Metro and Panda, but just about. I think that was enough to say the least for that one. The Renault 9, one of the most forgotten cars of the 1980s. It beat the Vauxhall Cavalier and VW Polo, and how many of these exist, I don't know. I've not seen one. That's how rare they are now these days. And then in 1983, the Audi 100, which again, it actually beat the Ford Sierra coming on launch initially, but not by much. But the wind tunnel effect on that car is astonishingly modern, and I think that's one of the most modern looking cars for 1983. Actually, I don't think there is a car that looks as modern as an Audi 800, Audi 100 in 1983. That's just definitely a win for Audi there, and it certainly made people look at them in a very different way. I like Audis personally. I prefer them over most German cars, to be honest. The Fiat Uno, which is obviously the Italian word for one, and the small Fiat took #1 place in 1984, beating the 205 and the VW Golf. That is quite a victory, considering the 205 especially is seen probably as the greatest Super Mini. I believe that. I don't think the VW Golf was not quite as good as what it's made out, but then again, you know, history tells you the wrong things. But the Uno was the very, very under the radar sort of car, but I don't know why. They were perfectly fine. 1985, Vauxhall Astra, beating the VW Golf and Astra in the Astra won in 1985. Although I dare say in 1985 the competition wouldn't have been too strong. I think it would have just been the VW Golf. I couldn't imagine anything like a Renault 25 or Lancia Fima. I think that was the other competitor. I wouldn't think they would be any particularly great, but I do apologise if it cut out there. 1986 Ford Scorpio, which was the Ford Granada Mark III. Again, no wonder it won this award. I mean, the first car in Europe to come with ABS as standard, and the first Ford or car in Europe, I believe, to have come with a heated windscreen. I mean, these are big things, but it was a well-designed car, and it just about beat the Mercedes E-Class. It was very close to a very close run race in 1986, but it won, and it won for a very good reason. Vauxhall Carlton, 1987, fantastic. Vauxhall was able to steer off the Audi 80, which had just come out, and the current BMW 7 Series. Very tight competitors indeed. The Peugeot 405. This is when Peugeot really, really nailed down the hatch. I mean, you had the 205, and then you got the 405, which is just exactly what you'd expect from a 205, but in a bigger package. They still handled well. They were ridiculously bulletproof most of the time, and I think Peugeot were in their golden age, and I'm not surprised it won in 1988. In 89, the Fiat Tipo. Oh my goodness me. And it shouldn't be forgotten that it beat the Vectra and the VW Passat. Tough competition for the Tipo. Again, another win for Fiat. Fiat have a habit of winning this award. I wonder why. The Citroen XM, and don't say because the Italians were bribing the judges, because that's not how it works. Citroen XM, goodness me. The Citroen XM being, I believe, the last Citroen to win the European Car of the Year until the present day. That's certainly an interesting shape, and it's not for everybody, but it was certainly sleek and different. And what I'm looking at with all these cars is that all these cars before me are so different. They have character, they have personality. It's just brilliant, utterly brilliant. Renault Clio, 1991. I mean, Japanese cars were starting to get really competitive, but the Clio still held on, and I'm not surprised with the Clio, to be honest. VW Golf Mark III. Now, it's interesting because the VW Golf had come out in the 1970s and it had taken them 20 years to win the award. I'm not quite sure why, but maybe it just wasn't as good year on year versus its competitors. Maybe so, I don't know, but overall most people probably disagree with that. But the Mark III was definitely a step forward and evolutionary change from the squared off section to make it more bubbly. A difficult car, the Mark III, and not enjoyed as much as the Mark 1, Mark 2, but nevertheless a good car in its own right. 1993, Nissan Micra, first Japanese car to win the European Car of the Year. I'm not surprised because it's just a good car. Although I dare say the Renault Safran and the Fiat Cinquecento should have been quite close by, but not far off indeed. 1994, Ford Mondeo. Again, the Mondeo was the first Fords, I would say, to be designed as a world car, and the amount of engineering and funds that Ford put into it, you can see where they were heading. And it was the first car that I think Ford thought really clearly about underneath, not to say on the top, but certainly underneath. And it was definitely a good ground for certainly the Fiesta and the Focus that came later on, and the KA, I should say. 1995, Fiat Punto, yay, at last. And I'm not surprised Fiat Punto was to win it. Yet another Fiat wins the award. I'm not surprised. Mark 1 Puntos, great car, very reliable, fire engines. What's to go wrong? Absolutely nothing. And then following on from that, another one, Fiat Bravo. And the Fiat Bravo, or Bravo. Now, I believe that the Bravo, let me think, is the 3-door and the Bravo's the 5-door? Or did I get that the wrong way around? Oh, dearie me. Someone, Neil, tell me if I'm wrong there. That's quite good competition considering the Peugeot 406 was certainly a competitive car at this time, but this still won the award. That's quite interesting. Unfortunately, they look very akin to Fiat Multipla Evolution, where Fiat was starting to go a bit more bubbly. Alfa Romeo 156 in 1998. That was a pretty clear victory, because I don't think there was many things in 1998 that really were brand new, apart from the car that's coming next, and you know what I'm going to say. 1999, Ford Focus Mark 1. Absolutely caused a stir, beating the Vauxhall Astra and the Peugeot 206 and the VW Golf Mark 4, though I say the Mark 4 came out slightly bit earlier. It doesn't matter because it caused so much of a stir. It won by a clear level, and it certainly gave a new level design and what people could expect for the everyday hatchback, blah 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 blah. I've said that all before. I'm not going to go on about that because I'm coming to the last thing, which I will say after this car. 2000 Toyota Yaris. I'm going to speed up through these. The Alfa Romeo 147 in 2001. Peugeot 307. That was a big soft call because that was a 2003, Renault again, absolutely, another French car. Fiat Panda, the redesigned Fiat Panda 2004, absolutely. 2005, I've lost interest. Shall we stop here? And that is your lineup of cars, guys. That is, I pretty much stopped after 2010, if you realise that, because quite frankly, everything else after 2010, give credit to the people that have to vote and the journalists that have to do this every single year, and it's a really good award, and it's a very accurate one, because I think it's quite an interesting one, because I think we get a bit rose tinted about what we consider to be great cars back in the day, and this kind of simplifies this a little bit, and it does show you what it was voted by motoring journalists who study these cars. inside and out on the year they were launched and put them against the competitors of that year. And only one car has won it twice, and that is the Fiat 128. That's it. That's the only car to win it twice. And it takes some fate, I can assure you of that. But anyway, what's the purpose of all this? Well, the purpose of this video is to tell you a little bit of a news story about the company, obviously, the magazine in question, that asked all their staff and journalists what they thought out of all these cars, 60 of them, was the best one of the lot. Now, it was a very clear victory, but of course most of you know what I'm going to say. They voted for the Ford Focus Mark 1. Absolutely amazing. I'm really pleased. And it won by quite a clear margin, according to the magazine. And I am definitely going to get that magazine. It's up to date, the February edition. And I am chuffed. I'm absolutely chuffed. Am I surprised? No. Because the Mark 1 Focus is very much in the public consciousness still. It is all around us. You can still see them on the streets occasionally, not as commonly as before. And I think people recognise how groundbreaking a car it was compared with all these other cars on paper. I think the P6 set a fantastic benchmark in 1964, and the Focus reiterated that in 1999. There were some great cars in between, but I don't think many of these cars are massively considered to be people's cars. Although I'd be wrong, because some of these have definitely been used by the masses and were very affordable and very reliable, and they did a great job, and people have got great memories of them. Peugeots of the 80s, Fiats of the 70s and 80s, and maybe even 90s. It's just Fiat all over the place. And I think you can't get away from Fiat. They just have a knack of making good cars. I think that's what's come out of this. The Ford Focus Mark 1 may be considered one of the greatest cars of all time, and this just reinforces what I've said in previous episodes. But I think the manufacturer that has made the greatest number of people's cars in great people's cars that just get you from A to B, they work and they give you everything you want, and that is Fiat, by one heck of a stretch of the imagination. There is no other manufacturer. I'm sorry, but you know, Rover have had some awards, but Ford have had one or two, but Fiat all over the place, and not just spread in one decade. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, they're everywhere. And that is the end of this episode. So a conclusive episode it is, in terms of if you're a Ford Focus Mark 1 fanatic, or if you're thinking of buying one, please buy one, because you know, people recognise this for the great car it is, and I'm getting that respect at shows now, and I think few people are. So get your Focus Mark 1 out to some shows and some meets, because there are many people who appreciate these cars for what they are now. Anyway guys, I will see you very soon in another episode. You take care. Good day.